This episode is brought to you by the IT News Benchmark Awards, which celebrate Australia's most outstanding and impactful IT projects and IT leaders. We're now accepting entries for all categories. Go to itnews.com.au/awards/about for more information and the entry forms. Join the who's who of the industry at the IT News Benchmark Awards Gala and get the recognition you and your project deserves. Hello and welcome to the IT News podcast. Our guest this fortnight is Rob Ison, the Chief Information Officer for Vocus. Rob takes us through the telco's IT strategy, as well as its agile ways of working program. He also discusses infrastructure modernisation and an ongoing simplification effort that aims to optimise how customers experience and interact with Vocus's services.
Rob, just to get started, why don't you share with us some of the key pillars of your IT leadership and strategy and your approach to technology investment?
Our strategy is underpinned by 4 key pillars. The first one is always to be customer and user driven. And I say customer and user to make the distinction between the end customers that we have, but also to recognise the users of our systems internally. Because I think if we pay attention to our users internally, they often provide a better experience for our customers as well. So we look at that from a point of view of what are the high volume sort of digital interactions that we have with our customers and users. And then distinctly, we look at what are some of the more secure experiences we need to provide to our customers, because security is a really important point for our customer base. That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is all about scale. So we're very big on scale in Vocus, and you may have heard about some of the transactions we're attempting to make in market right now. But within scale, it's really important first for us to simplify, because I think the best automation is deletion, in my view. So there's a big focus on what can we leave behind versus what can we take forward. And so simplification is huge. And of course, you wouldn't have a good IT strategy without some AI and automation. So we're very focused on that. So that's pillar 2. Pillar 3 is all about quality for us. There's no point if you've got a good customer story, if you can do it at scale, but if the quality isn't there, then you're not really going to delight your customers. So quality for us starts with security and ends with sort of the resiliency of what we do there. And our cloud modernisation strategy is a big part of that. So those are the top sort of 3 pillars, and all of that sits on top of essentially our enablement program, where this year it's been very much about our agile transformation to build more capacity and scale.
Oh, well, I think that's a great place to start. And so I understand you've been in the role now, coming on for 2 years. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about what have been some of the main initiatives and projects that you've been undertaking since joining Vocus?
So it is year 2, I'd say. It's the first year of my own plan. The first year of being in the job is always inheriting and rolling that out. The second year has been very much about instilling that strategy and making the initiatives our own. And I think the best place to start is actually the Accelerate program around Agile, because the way we work was one of the biggest things that we've been changing over the last year or so. Accelerate's the name we give to our Agile transformation program. It's really got a few tenets. The first tenet really is about that business involvement. So one of the things I observed when I joined was that we were operating like a subcontractor inside of Vocus, the technology group. We would get requirements and we would build them, but there wouldn't really be that collaborative relationship with the business around how do we work on what it is that we're really trying to do. So that tenet is built in from the start of Accelerate. And then I think the other things that are really key are around driving persistence and depth of experience. So moving away from generalist resources that move from project to project and instilling a little bit more competency and depth. And I think that gives a better result in terms of delivery. And we've seen that, as well as I think a better career path and enjoyment and engagement for the staff as well. So those are a couple of the really key pillars, and it's really been working out for us. So in the quarter 4 of last year, we benchmarked how many, we call them features. That's how we measure our capacity. We delivered about 12. When we put Accelerate into production, the first quarter, we delivered 16. And then the next quarter, we delivered 23. And we're on track to deliver 40 this quarter as well. So we realized that our targets were woefully insufficient or sandbagging. So we're really pushing hard there. So there's a number of other projects, but that's the one I'm really quite proud of, because if we learn how to work together in technology and with the rest of the business, then I think we can unlock a lot more.
That's incredible. People say it all the time. So much of what was required wasn't a technology change. It was an operational change. It was the way we work change. Just to delve into it a little bit deeper, can you just tell me what agile working under the Accelerate methodology looks like on the ground, how it affects certain teams, how it affects workload, and how it affects allocation of resources?
I think start with that business interaction that I mentioned before. So our agile sort of system of work is really broken into two major stages. We call them our mission teams. They're focused on what and why and the initial high-level design. And then the second stage is the software engineering teams, which is very much about how and when, and they deliver through that. That shows up then in specific roles that exist within the business. So the mission leads, we call them, they actually are sponsored by, sit inside of our sales arm, our operational arm, our billing arm, etc. We have a few of those missions, and that's a new role. It didn't exist in Vocus before. So that was created, and that immediately meant that each of those executives and line leaderships were much more invested in what they were asking for. And we then have a bit of a flow to work structure. So it's not a full chapter matricy structure in Vocus. We're not quite that large, but we do have key roles that are common across each mission in terms of a solution architect, a business analyst, and a delivery lead. And together with the mission lead, they form that sort of kernel of what is it that the business is looking to do? Why are they trying to achieve that? What is the solution at a high level that is required to do that? And that then leads to a business case. Whereas before, the business cases were purely financial intent oriented. And what would happen is lots of business cases would get through and then no one knows how to deliver them. We can't deliver them. So that shows up that way. And then on the software engineering side of things, a little bit more what you'd expect, where you have feature teams associated with certain capabilities or platforms that then run through leveraging Scrum methodology. We do PI planning and the like. So I don't think rocket science. We haven't really changed the overarching agile playbook, so to speak, but we've taken the pieces that work for us and applied it in context in Vocus. And I'm always, I think a measure of success is when my peers at an executive level start using the terminology, start using the reports and referring to capacity more so than desire, and realizing that we only have a certain amount of capacity at one time and making priority calls. I think that's a good sign that it's been picked up.
How have you found this change of organisational structure has helped with stakeholder engagement and ensuring that the technology decisions and the technology operations is all aligned and your stakeholders are on board with it and understand the why over these decisions?
Before I joined, technology was within the operations space under the COO. It was a very large area, and I think what that led to somewhat unconsciously was just a lack of that sort of technology presence in the executive decision making. So it was just more of not an intentional downplay of technology, but certainly in practice, a deferral of the engagement. So me having a seat at the table at the executive level when we're setting the plan, setting the strategy, I think has really helped that understanding and empathy of what actually goes on and what it means to choose to go left or go right in terms of whatever it is we're deciding. So I think it's really, one, shifted left the conversation, and two, afforded me the opportunity to tell the technology story is probably the other big thing. Otherwise, the technology story is often told for the technology team, whereas this way I'm able to tell it from the top and message it not just to my peers, but in town halls and all those sorts of events that I have the pleasure of being a part of in Vocus.
Yeah, I think that's a great show of the way CIOs are embedded and should be embedded in the broader organisation. I'd love to find out a little bit more about, I think you touched on it earlier, about the simplification program and alongside that, the cloud modernization program, because I believe the two are fairly entwined.
I'll start with the cloud modernization first, but then I'll circle back on the broader simplification program. We had a number of clouds within Vocus. I won't tell you the number, but let's just say a lot. That is more from our legacy or DNA history. We're a company that's founded on M&A. So we've acquired a lot of companies. We continue to seek to acquire companies, but it meant we had a lot of infrastructure. When I joined, it was a little bit of a, why do we have that history? Okay, we should do something about that. And so really that was just a pretty straightforward, we just need to modernize. We have to have a target. We need to get disciplined around our architecture. Since that time, we've deployed our go-to on-premise environment, which consolidates quite a number down, as well as our go-to cloud environment as well. And once you've done that, you can invest a lot more in hardening those platforms for resiliency, security, and for scalability. So we're about maybe 30-40% of the way there through modernizing just the infrastructure layer. And that's delivering both resiliency, quality benefits, but as well as economically. A lot of the OEMs have changed their operating model or their pricing models lately, and it's caused skyrocketing cost. It's not quite as cheap as it used to be. So we've been able to actually save quite a lot of money in doing that as well. And it gives us a platform from which we can continue to simplify the applications and operate the business. The other point on simplification that I'll make, though, is we've partnered quite a lot with the front end of the business, particularly our product teams. Because I think we would all know, people listening to this podcast would know that you can't necessarily migrate everything when you've still got live customers on it. But you've got a trade-off to make. Either you rebuild that and you migrate in the background, it's costly to do that, or you have to interrupt your customer's service and move them to something different. So that's not a simple thing, and horses for courses, neither option is always the best. But we've partnered quite a lot with our product team, and happy to say now we actually do have an ongoing simplification program. It'll run, I think, more so in perpetuity, I think, than as a project. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Simplification to me isn't a project. It is actually a discipline, a lifecycle management investment that you need to make so that you're constantly modernizing your customers' experiences as well as optimizing the infrastructure and services behind it.
You say consolidation and simplification is a program, it's not a project. I was wondering how being in that position, already carrying out all the simplification, help you prepare when the next big M&A occurs.
In terms of Vocus's history in doing that, I think it's taught us a lot of hard lessons around moving quicker to make decision. I think is important, rather progress over perfection, looking for the initial sources of value, either from an operational cost perspective, but also for customers, and making choices. Yeah, I think the main lessons are make choices, look to simplify, be customer-oriented, be commercially oriented, and stay the distance so that you can ultimately get to a better place.
And just on the customer-facing front, my understanding is that 80% interactions or services are now conducted digitally. Can you just tell me how you've achieved this milestone?
I think it's a win-win in this day and age to have a really strong digital interaction channel. How we got there, I think, was one, an investment in our platforms and capabilities such that customers do have the option to do that, I think is the obvious first thing to say. A commitment to continuing to invest in that and not have them static at any point in time. If you look at what we offer on our portal and digital channels today, it would be different from what we offered 6 months ago, 12 months ago. So we're constantly creating a reason for customers to interact that way. And I think, touching back on my previous point, the one thing that we did, which was a bit courageous, but I think right, is to shut down the other sources of interaction, which can sound a little bit anti-customer at times. Of course, we're very attuned to our customer needs. Our point of view is if we consolidate and scale and invest in fewer channels, but do them at a greater depth, then customers will net benefit from that. And that's what I think we've seen our interaction score steadily grow in terms of how we're capturing those. And it's now just above 80%, 83%, I think we did last month. So it still continues to grow. It probably will cap out at that 85 level because there's always a place, I think, for human interactions, and that's good. Where we're really focused a lot more now is building the depth behind those experiences. So over the last 3-4-ish months, we've been very much focused on our assurance digital depth, we call it. So whilst we're capturing the interaction digitally and processing that, there's still touch points human that are manual. And so the time to resolve, even through a digital channel, can still be improved. So we spent a lot of time on automating self-service appointment management, automating our sort of trouble ticket updates and the like. And I'm quite happy to see that right now we've removed several thousand touch points per month now, which, whilst I don't have the exact measurement of time to resolve just yet, it's one thing I've got to go and get. I do know that every time we remove a human from that loop, it can move faster.
My takeaway from recently seeing a lot of customer experience specialists speaking is there is a huge amount of work done to develop agentic AI. I'd love to see where you're kind of on that journey and, how you are kind of bringing perhaps, generative AI and beyond to either the back end or even, increasingly onto the front end of customer interactions.
So AI is obviously a huge opportunity. There's always a degree of hype and Kool-Aid in there, but even if you look at the sort of midpoint of what it may bring, it's certainly a big opportunity, I think, for everyone, and we're no different from that. Where we are in our AI journey is we use it a lot in particularly areas like security, where you're dealing with such huge volumes of events and detection. So we've been investing in machine learning technologies with our partners for some time, and we continue to do that. Since I've started, we're processing 3 times the number of events from when we started, and it's numbers in the billions of events every month that we're dealing with. And we couldn't do that without AI and ML, which has been around for a little while, but I raise it because I think it's still an important part of AI that we want to continue to get benefit out of it, and we'll continue to invest in that space. On the generative front, we've spent the last roughly 12 months or so, I think we've made quite a good amount of progress with regards to, I call it knowledge management. So this is your sort of more your co-pilot type of functions. We've built our own internal knowledge management chatbot, very much a human in the loop. How do we process information faster and get to the right answer quicker? And more recently, we've deployed an agent to help us with proposal generation and compliance questionnaires and the like. But we're still very much at Vocus in the human in the loop phase. Of course, the direction would be to empower these agents to take action. It's certainly something we're looking at, but I'd say it's early days for us. We're a critical infrastructure provider. We're quite conscious about making sure that when an agent or an AI is taking action, that it's highly secure, it's done in the right way, both contractually, ethically, and the like. We have to be pretty sure before we let it loose onto touching network elements. But we're quite optimistic about what it may do in that service arena in terms of handling delivery transactions, more of the high volume common elements that don't deeply touch our network. So it's an area of focus for us. I'd say it's early days for us, but we're optimistic.
But you've encountered some positive benefits, though, in incorporating in your disaster and detection and response capability.
My costs would have blown out a long time ago had I not embraced that technology early on through our partners. So it definitely helps with efficiency. There's definitely benefits out there. We've just got to consume it at the pace that we can in a safe and reliable way.
Just to wrap up then, a lot of our listeners will be up and coming in the technology industry, but anybody who is looking to rise up the ranks, what advice would you give from your overall career?
I think the best advice I can give you is to believe in yourself, to have drive, and to be willing to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone. It's a little bit of a cliche, but it's really true. One great mentor of mine used to say to me, Rob, if you're not feeling just a little bit sick each morning when you go to tackle something, then maybe you're a little bit too comfortable, which might not be the right PC thing to say. But his point, I think, was bang on, which is you do need to push yourself. You do need to put your hand up. You do need to step forward a little bit into the unknown and back yourself to get there. And I think if you are like that and committed to your work and you look for the challenges, I think opportunity will find you. The other thing, just to share my own personal story, is I do my best, not always the best at it, but do my best to make sure there is the right amount of focus on yourself. Fitness is important to me, spending as much time as I can with my family, although I'm sure they would say it's not enough. You do need the downtime, right? I believe very much in energy management, more so than time management. And so as long as you've got that energy, as long as you're investing enough in yourself, and that's different for everyone, then it's really an individual choice as to how much you want to step forward.
I think that's a really profound note to end on, so thank you so much, Rob.
That's the podcast for this fortnight. Stay tuned for the next episode. And for all the latest headlines and happenings in Australian technology news, head over to itnews.com.au.